The coffee machine gurgled like a drowning cat, and I couldn't help but think it sounded exactly like my marriage, loud, messy, and probably beyond repair. Down in my basement workshop at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, surrounded by circuit boards and the gentle hum of my home server, I was doing what I did best, fixing things that other people had broken. "Keaton, are you still down there?" Lara's voice drifted through the floorboards above, sweet as artificial honey. "I'm heading to bed. Early yoga tomorrow." Yoga. Right. The same yoga that happened 3 times a week at the Marriott downtown, according to the location data syncing from her phone to our shared cloud storage. Funny how that particular yoga studio seemed to be located exclusively in hotel rooms. "Be right up," I called back, though we both knew I wouldn't be. These late-night repair sessions had become my sanctuary, the one place where Lara's perfectly manicured presence couldn't reach. The one place where I could think clearly about what I'd discovered 3 weeks ago when I'd set up the automatic backup system for all our devices. My wife was having an affair with her sister's ex-husband, and tomorrow was my birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me. 38 years old, a senior network engineer at the city's biggest tech firm, and I'd been outsmarted by my own backup protocols. Every text message, every photo, every GPS ping, all of it automatically archived on my server, all of it telling the same sordid story. I picked up the coffee machine's heating element, examining the burnt coil. Some things couldn't be fixed, no matter how much you wanted them to work. Some things were just fundamentally flawed from the start. My phone buzzed. A text from Avon, Lara's younger sister. "Tomorrow's the day. Are you ready for this?" I typed back, "As ready as anyone can be for their own birthday surprise. Trust me, she has no idea what's coming." I set the phone down and stared at the broken heating element. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a faithful husband, blissfully ignorant of my wife's extracurricular activities. Then I'd found the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts charged to Kai Dornell's credit card, the same Kai who'd been married to Avon until 6 months ago. That's when Avon had reached out. She'd been gathering evidence too, suspecting something was wrong with her marriage, but never imagining the scope of the betrayal. 2 siblings, 2 marriages, one devastating affair that had destroyed everything. But tomorrow, everything would change. I climbed the stairs to find our townhouse dark and silent. Lara's bedroom door was closed. We'd been sleeping separately for months, another red flag I'd chosen to ignore. I passed by our wedding photo in the hallway, both of us smiling like we believed in forever. Lara looked radiant in her white dress, her blonde hair perfect, her blue eyes sparkling with what I'd thought was love. Now I knew better. Now I knew that sparkle was ambition, and I'd been nothing more than a stepping stone to something better. In my own bedroom, I pulled up the server interface on my laptop. 3 weeks of evidence, all organized in neat folders. Hotel receipts, text messages, photos that would make a sailor blush. Kai Dornell thought he was clever, but he'd been sloppy. Rich men often were. The plan was simple, elegant even. Lara wanted to humiliate me with a public divorce announcement at my birthday dinner. She'd already made the reservations at Marcello's, the upscale Italian place where we'd had our first date. She'd invited all her friends, probably expecting me to beg or cry or make a scene. Instead, I was going to give her exactly what she wanted. And then some. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from Avon, her own divorce papers, signed and notarized. She looked stunning in the selfie, her dark hair falling over one shoulder, her green eyes bright with anticipation. She was 2 years younger than Lara, but infinitely more genuine. Where Lara was all sharp edges and calculated charm, Avon was warm, real, and apparently just as fed up with being betrayed as I was. "See you tomorrow night," her message read. "Time to return some gifts." I closed the laptop and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. Tomorrow would either be the worst birthday of my life or the best. Either way, it would definitely be memorable. The next morning, Lara was already gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter informed me she'd be running errands all day, but would see me at dinner. More likely, she was with Kai, putting the finishing touches on whatever humiliation she had planned. I spent the day at work, trying to focus on network configurations and server maintenance, while my colleagues wished me happy birthday. Frank Morrison, my closest friend at the office and a former Marine who'd seen action in 3 different conflicts, stopped by my cubicle around noon. "You look like someone who's about to walk into an ambush," he said, settling his bulk into the chair beside my desk. "What's eating you, Keaton?" Frank was one of the few people who knew about my marital troubles, though I hadn't shared the full extent of what I'd discovered. He was also one of the most loyal people I'd ever met, the kind of guy who'd have your back in any situation. "Birthday dinner tonight," I said, not looking up from my monitor. "Lara's planned something special." "Special good or special bad?" "Definitely special bad, but maybe special good too, depending on how you look at it." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Frank leaned back, studying me with those sharp eyes that had kept him alive in places where other men hadn't been so fortunate. "You need backup?" "I might. Are you free around 8? "For you? Always. Just say the word." At 6 o'clock, I left the office and drove home to get ready. Lara was already there, putting on makeup in the bathroom mirror. She looked incredible. A black dress that hugged her curves, her hair styled in loose waves, her lips painted the color of fresh cherries. She was dressed to impress, and I had a pretty good idea who she was trying to impress. "Happy birthday, honey," she said, kissing my cheek without actually touching her lips to my skin. "I hope you're ready for your surprise." "I've been looking forward to it all day," I replied, and I wasn't lying. "Should I dress up for this?" "Definitely. Wear the blue suit, the one that brings out your eyes." The blue suit she'd bought me for our anniversary 2 years ago. The one she'd said made me look distinguished. Now I wondered if she'd chosen it because it would photograph well when she served me with divorce papers. I showered and dressed, taking my time. In the mirror, I looked like a man preparing for his own execution. Thin build, brown hair that was starting to show gray at the temples, hazel eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Not exactly leading man material, but I'd never thought that mattered. Lara had seemed to love me for my mind, my stability, my dry sense of humor. Apparently, I'd been wrong about that too. At 7:30, we drove to Marcello's in separate cars. Lara claimed she had to make a quick stop afterward, but I suspected she wanted the freedom to leave with someone else if things went according to her plan. The restaurant was busy, filled with the usual mix of couples and business dinners. Marcello's was the kind of place where people went to celebrate or to impress, all exposed brick and dim lighting and prices that made you think twice about ordering dessert. Lara had reserved the private dining room in the back, and when we walked in, I saw she'd invited quite a crowd. Maya Rodriguez? No, Maya Sullivan, her influencer friend who documented every meal for her social media followers. Brett Carver, who I recognized as Kai's business partner, a thin man with expensive tastes and a reputation for cleaning up other people's messes. A few other faces from Lara's social circle, people who'd always been polite to me but never particularly warm. And there, sitting at the far end of the table like she owned the place, was Avon. She looked up when we entered, and our eyes met for just a moment. She was wearing a green dress that matched her eyes, and she looked nervous and excited and beautiful all at once. She raised her wine glass slightly in my direction, a subtle toast that no one else would notice. "Keaton!" Maya sprang up to hug me, her phone already out to record the moment. "Happy birthday! Lara's been so mysterious about tonight. We're all eager to find out what she has planned." "I'm sure it'll be unforgettable," I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. Lara sat to my right, Avon to my left. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. We ordered dinner and made small talk while we waited for the food to arrive. Brett regaled us with stories about his latest real estate deals. Maya showed us her newest sponsored content. Avon mostly stayed quiet, sipping her wine and watching Lara with an expression I couldn't quite read. The food was excellent, as always. Pasta that melted in your mouth, wine that probably cost more per bottle than I made in a day, bread that was still warm from the oven. Under different circumstances, it would have been a perfect birthday dinner. As the waiter cleared our plates, Lara stood up and tapped her wine glass with her fork. The room fell silent. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she began, her voice carrying that practiced tone she used for presentations at work. "As you all know, today is Keaton's birthday, and I wanted to do something really special for him. Something he'll never forget." She reached into her purse and pulled out a red envelope, the kind lawyers use for important documents. My heart started beating faster, but not from fear, from anticipation. "Keaton, honey, we've been married for 5 years now, and I think it's time we both admitted that we want different things out of life. You're a wonderful man, but you're not the right man for me. So for your birthday, I'm giving you something I know you'll appreciate in the long run." She handed me the envelope with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Around the table, her friends shifted uncomfortably, suddenly realizing they were witnessing something more dramatic than they'd bargained for. I opened the envelope slowly, making a show of reading the divorce papers even though I'd expected them. The room was so quiet, I could hear the air conditioning humming overhead. "Well?" Lara prompted, her smile growing wider. "Aren't you going to say anything?" I set the papers down and looked up at her. "Actually, I have something to say, but first, I think Avon has something she'd like to share." All eyes turned to Avon, who reached into her own purse and pulled out an identical red envelope. "Funny thing, Lara," Avon said, her voice steady and clear. "I was just about to give Kai the same gift. Turns out we both married the wrong people." She slid her divorce papers across the table to Brett, who picked them up with trembling hands. His face went white as he read the documents. "I don't understand," Maya said, looking back and forth between the sisters. "What's going on here?" I stood up, pulling a pen from my jacket pocket. "What's going on, Maya, is that my wife has been having an affair with her sister's husband for the past 6 months. Hotel rooms, business trips, late-night yoga sessions. The whole sordid mess." Lara's smile finally faltered. "Keaton, you're being ridiculous. I don't know what you think you—" "I think I have about 300 text messages that say otherwise," I interrupted, signing the divorce papers with a flourish. "I think I have hotel receipts and GPS data and photos that would make a grown man weep. But you know what? You're absolutely right. This is the best birthday gift you could have given me." I handed the signed papers back to her, and for the first time since I'd known her, Lara looked genuinely shocked. "You're signing them?" she whispered. "Of course I'm signing them. Why would I want to stay married to someone who thinks so little of me, that she'd humiliate me in front of all these people? Why would I want to be tied to someone who's been lying to my face for months?" Avon stood up beside me, her own papers signed and ready. "And why would I want to stay married to a man who's been cheating on me with my own sister?" The silence in the room was deafening. Maya's phone was recording everything, though I doubted she'd be posting this particular video to her social media accounts. Brett cleared his throat nervously. "Perhaps we should all calm down and discuss this privately." "Oh, I think we're way past private discussions," I said, my voice carrying an edge I didn't recognize. "In fact, I think it's time everything came out into the open. Don't you agree, Lara?" My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, stared at me like she'd never seen me before. And maybe she hadn't. Maybe the man she'd married, the quiet engineer who fixed her computer problems and never raised his voice, had been hiding someone else underneath all along. Someone who was tired of being taken for granted. Someone who was ready to fight back. The birthday cake arrived just then, wheeled in by a cheerful waiter who had no idea he was interrupting the nuclear destruction of 2 marriages. It was chocolate, my favorite, with 38 candles flickering in the dim light. "Make a wish," Avon said softly, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I looked around the table at the shocked faces, at Lara's perfect makeup starting to run, at Brett frantically texting someone who was probably Kai. Then I blew out the candles, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The morning after my birthday dinner, I woke up in my own bed for what I knew would be one of the last times. Lara had left sometime during the night, probably to Kai's place, though I didn't particularly care where she'd gone. The house felt different without her presence, lighter somehow, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had finally been lifted. I made coffee with the machine I'd repaired, savoring the fact that it worked perfectly now that I'd replaced the broken heating element. Some things could be fixed, after all. Some things just needed the right person to identify the problem and take action. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages. 3 from Frank, asking if I needed backup. 2 from my brother in Seattle, who'd somehow heard about the dinner through Maya's social media posts. And 7 from Avon. "Meet me at my apartment at noon," her latest message read. "We need to talk strategy." Strategy. I liked the sound of that. For too long, I'd been reactive, letting things happen to me instead of taking control. But the look on Lara's face when I'd signed those papers had shown me something important. I was done being a victim. I spent the morning organizing my evidence, creating neat digital folders that would make any prosecutor weep with joy. Not that I was planning to involve the authorities. What Lara and Kai had done was morally reprehensible, but it wasn't criminal. No, what I had in mind was something far more satisfying than a court case that would drag on for years. I was planning to destroy them socially, professionally, and financially, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. Avon's apartment was in the trendy part of downtown, a converted warehouse with exposed pipes and floor-to-ceiling windows that probably cost more per month than I made in 2. She answered the door wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking more beautiful without makeup than Lara ever had with a full face of cosmetics. "Come in," she said, stepping aside to let me enter. I made coffee, real coffee, not that instant stuff Lara always drank. The apartment was minimalist, but warm, filled with books and plants and artwork that actually meant something. It was the kind of place where you could think clearly, where you could plan without distractions. "So," Avon said, handing me a mug of coffee that smelled like heaven, "how does it feel to be a free man?" "Liberating," I admitted, settling onto her couch. "And terrifying. And exciting. Pretty much every emotion at once." She sat beside me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and clean, nothing like Lara's overpowering designer fragrance. "I've been thinking about what happens next," she said. "Lara's going to try to take you for everything you're worth in the divorce. She'll claim you were emotionally distant, that you drove her into Kai's arms. She'll paint herself as the victim. Let her try. I've got enough evidence to bury that narrative before it gets started." Avon smiled, and it was sharp and predatory and absolutely beautiful. "Show me." I pulled out my laptop and opened the files I'd been organizing all morning. Hotel receipts dating back 6 months. Text messages that left nothing to the imagination. Photos that Kai had apparently sent to Lara from various business trips, proving that their affair had been going on far longer than either of them had admitted. "This is incredible," Avon breathed, scrolling through the evidence. "How did you get all of this?" "Automatic backup system. Every device in our house syncs to my server, including Lara's phone and laptop. She never bothered to opt out because she trusted me not to look. Big mistake." "And she has no idea you have all this?" "None whatsoever. As far as she knows, I'm just the boring tech guy who fixes her computer when it crashes." Avon leaned back, studying me with those green eyes. "You're not boring, Keaton. You're dangerous. I just don't think anyone's ever bothered to notice before." Something in her tone made my pulse quicken, but I forced myself to focus on the matter at hand. "What about Kai? What do you have on him?" "Oh, I have plenty." She pulled out her own laptop, opening files that made my evidence look tame by comparison. Financial records showing he's been embezzling from his real estate firm, photos of him with at least 3 other women besides Lara, and this. She opened a video file that showed Kai in what appeared to be a hotel room, snorting something white off a glass table, which I'm pretty sure his business partners would find very interesting. I stared at the screen, amazed. "How did you get all this?" "Private investigator. Cost me a fortune, but it was worth every penny. I've been planning this for months, Keaton. Ever since I started suspecting something was wrong with my marriage. I just needed the right moment to strike. And last night was that moment. Last night was perfect. Did you see Brett's face when he realized what was happening? He's Kai's fixer, the guy who's supposed to keep him out of trouble. But he can't fix this. No one can." I closed my laptop and looked at her. Really looked at her. Avon had always been in Lara's shadow, the quieter sister, the one who didn't demand attention. But sitting here in her apartment, surrounded by evidence of her careful planning and ruthless intelligence, I realized I'd been seeing her all wrong. She wasn't in anyone's shadow. She was just selective about when she chose to step into the light. "So what's the plan?" I asked. "Phase 1 is already complete. We've filed for divorce, and we've made it clear that we know about the affair. Now comes Phase 2, social destruction." She opened a new folder on her laptop, revealing screenshots of social media posts, email addresses, and contact information for what appeared to be half the city. Lara's built her entire identity around being the perfect wife, the successful businesswoman, the social media darling. She's got 15,000 followers on Instagram, all of whom think she's living the dream. What happens when they find out the truth? Her world collapses. Exactly, and Kai's even more vulnerable. His business depends on his reputation, his connections, his image as a family man. He's got investors, clients, partners, all of whom trusted him with their money and their secrets. What happens when they discover he's been lying to everyone? I was beginning to understand the scope of what she was proposing. This wasn't just revenge, it was complete and total destruction, carried out with surgical precision. How do we do it without it tracing back to us? Avon's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Leave that to me. I've been planning this for a long time, Keaton. I know exactly how to make it look like their own actions caught up with them." We spent the next 2 hours going over the details. Anonymous tips to Kai's business partners about his financial irregularities. Carefully timed leaks of evidence to Lara's employer, who took a dim view of employees having affairs with clients. Social media posts that would appear to come from concerned friends, sharing just enough information to start the gossip mill turning. It was elegant in its simplicity. We wouldn't have to lift a finger, we'd just light the fuse and let their own lies do the rest. "There's one more thing," Avon said as I was getting ready to leave. "Something I haven't told you yet." "What's that?" She hesitated, looking suddenly vulnerable. "This isn't just about revenge for me, Keaton. I mean, it started that way, but somewhere along the line, it became about something else." "What do you mean?" "I mean that watching you last night, seeing you take control of the situation, seeing you refuse to be a victim, it was the most attractive thing I've ever witnessed. And I've been thinking about what happens after we destroy them, about what happens between us." My mouth went dry. "Avon, I know it's complicated. I know the timing is terrible, but I can't pretend I don't feel something here, and I don't think you can either." She was right, of course. The attraction had been building for weeks, ever since we'd started planning our revenge. But it was more than physical. It was intellectual, emotional, the recognition of finding someone who understood you completely. "After," I said finally. "Let's focus on destroying our cheating spouses first, and then we can figure out what comes next." She nodded, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. After, then. I drove home thinking about everything we'd discussed, about the plan we'd set in motion, about the way Avon had looked at me when she'd called me dangerous. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, energized by the prospect of taking action instead of just enduring whatever life threw at me. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Frank's number. "Keaton, buddy, you need to get down to the Junction. Now." The Junction was the blue-collar bar where Frank spent most of his evenings, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business and gossip traveled faster than wildfire. "Why? What's going on?" "Your wife's here, and she's not alone." 20 minutes later, I walked into the Junction to find Lara holding court at the center of the bar, surrounded by a crowd of regulars who were hanging on her every word. She was still wearing the black dress from last night, though it looked considerably more wrinkled now, and her makeup was smeared from what had obviously been a night of heavy drinking. Kai was beside her, his expensive suit rumpled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. They looked like two people who'd been hit by a truck and were still trying to figure out what had happened. "Completely blindsided me," Lara was saying, her voice loud and slurred. 5 years of marriage, and he just throws it all away because he's jealous of my success. He's always been threatened by strong women. Several people at the bar nodded sympathetically, but I noticed that Donna, the owner, was watching the performance with skeptical eyes. Donna had been running the Junction for 20 years, and she could spot a liar from across the room. "And poor Kai," Lara continued, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "His wife just up and left him without any explanation. Some people have no loyalty, no commitment to working through problems." That was my cue. I walked over to the bar and ordered a beer, making sure my voice carried across the room. "Donna, you wouldn't believe the birthday surprise I got last night. My wife served me with divorce papers in front of all her friends. Apparently, she's been having an affair with her sister's husband for the past 6 months." The bar fell silent. Every eye in the place turned to look at Lara, whose face had gone white as paper. "That's not," she started, but I cut her off. "Hotel receipts, text messages, photos, I've got it all. Amazing what people will put in writing when they think no one's watching." Kai stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "We don't have to listen to this. Come on, Lara, let's go somewhere civilized." "Oh, but I thought you liked it here," I said, taking a sip of my beer. "According to your credit card statements, you've been coming here quite a bit lately, usually with my wife." Donna's eyebrows shot up. "That true, Kai? You been bringing another man's wife to my establishment?" "It's not what it looks like," Kai said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Really? Because it looks like two married people sneaking around behind their spouses' backs, lying to everyone they claim to care about. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's an innocent explanation for all those hotel receipts." Lara grabbed Kai's arm, pulling him toward the door. "We're leaving. And Keaton? You're going to regret this. I'll take everything you have in the divorce." I raised my beer in a mock toast. "Looking forward to it. Should be fun watching you explain all that evidence to a judge." They left in a flurry of expensive perfume and wounded pride, but the damage was done. Within hours, everyone in the city would know the truth about their affair. The gossip network at the Junction was more efficient than any social media platform. Frank appeared at my elbow, grinning from ear to ear. "That was beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. I haven't seen someone get taken down that hard since basic training." "This is just the beginning," I said, finishing my beer. "By the time I'm done with them, they'll wish they'd never met each other." "Need any help with the heavy lifting?" I looked at my friend, this loyal, dangerous man who'd offered to have my back without even knowing the full story. "Actually, Frank, I might have a job for you. How do you feel about a little automotive work?" His grin got wider. "What kind of automotive work?" "The kind that sends a message." Lara's car was parked in the driveway when I got home from the junction, which meant she'd come back to pack her things. Good. It would save me the trouble of boxing up her belongings and dropping them off at Kai's place. I parked on the street and sat in my car for a moment, watching the lights move around inside our house. My house, I corrected myself. According to the divorce papers, I'd be keeping the property, along with most of our assets. Lara had been so confident in her ability to manipulate me that she'd agreed to a very unfavorable settlement, assuming she could renegotiate later. Another big mistake. My phone buzzed with a text from Avon. Phase 2 is in motion. Check your email in about an hour. I smiled and got out of the car. Time to send a message of my own. Lara was in the bedroom, stuffing clothes into suitcases with the kind of frantic energy that suggested she was either very angry or very scared. Probably both. I see you're moving out, I said from the doorway. Need help carrying anything to the car? She whirled around, her eyes blazing with fury. You humiliated me in front of half the city tonight. That little performance at the junction was completely unnecessary. Was it? Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were trying to rewrite history, painting yourself as the victim, making me out to be the jealous, controlling husband. I just wanted to make sure everyone had the facts. Facts? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about facts? Here's a fact for you, Keaton. I never loved you. Not really. You were safe, stable, boring, everything I thought I wanted when I was younger and stupider. But I deserve better than a life of quiet desperation with a man who's more interested in his computers than his wife. The words should have hurt, but instead, they felt liberating. Finally, she was being honest. Finally, the mask was off. You're right, I said, leaning against the doorframe. You do deserve better. You deserve someone who lies as easily as you do, someone who's willing to betray their own family for a good time. You deserve Kai. Her face twisted with rage. At least Kai knows how to make a woman feel desired. At least he's not afraid to take what he wants. Speaking of taking what he wants, how much do you know about Kai's business practices? His financial situation? Because I've been doing some research, and it turns out your boyfriend has some very interesting hobbies. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. What are you talking about? I'm talking about embezzlement, Lara. I'm talking about a man who's been stealing from his own company to fund his lifestyle. I'm talking about someone who's about to lose everything, and I do mean everything. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see the gears turning in her head. Lara was many things, but she wasn't stupid. She could recognize a sinking ship when she saw one. You're bluffing, she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Why don't you ask Brett? I'm sure he'd be happy to discuss Kai's financial irregularities, assuming he's still taking Kai's calls after tonight. I turned and walked away, leaving her to finish packing. I had work to do. In my basement workshop, I pulled up the files Avon and I had prepared. With a few keystrokes, I sent anonymous tips to 3 different regulatory agencies, each one containing carefully selected evidence of Kai's embezzlement. Nothing that could be traced back to me, but enough to trigger investigations that would tie him up in legal proceedings for years. Next, I accessed Lara's social media accounts. She'd never bothered to change her passwords, another oversight that was about to cost her dearly. I didn't post anything directly, but I did make some subtle changes to her privacy settings, ensuring that certain private messages would become visible to her followers within the next few hours. Messages that detailed her affair with Kai. Messages that mocked me, her friends, even her own family. Messages that revealed the person she really was underneath all that carefully constructed charm. My phone rang. Frank's number. Mission accomplished, he said without preamble. Your wife's boyfriend is going to have some interesting transportation challenges tomorrow. What did you do? Nothing permanent, just a little creative mechanical work. His precious BMW won't start, but any decent mechanic can fix it in about an hour. The real message is on the windshield. What kind of message? The kind that washes off but makes a point. Let's just say he'll know exactly who sent it. I grinned. Frank had a talent for psychological warfare that had served him well in the military and was serving me even better now. Thanks, Frank. I owe you one. You don't owe me anything, buddy. This is what friends do for each other. Besides, I haven't had this much fun since I got out of the service. After we hung up, I went upstairs to find Lara loading her suitcases into her car. She looked up when she saw me, her expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been regret. "This doesn't have to be ugly, Keaton," she said. "We can handle this like adults." "You're absolutely right. We can handle this exactly like adults, which means no more lies, no more manipulation, and no more trying to rewrite history to make yourself look better." She slammed the trunk of her car with more force than necessary. "Fine. But don't think this is over. I'll fight you for everything and I'll win. I always win. We'll see about that." She got in her car and drove off without another word, leaving me standing in my driveway feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since I'd discovered her affair, I was looking forward to tomorrow. An hour later, my email chimed with a message from an anonymous account. The subject line read, "Phase 2 complete." I opened it to find a series of screenshots showing social media posts, news articles, and forum discussions. Avon had been busy. Very busy. Lara's affair was trending on 3 different local social media groups. Her employer had received anonymous tips about her relationship with a client, complete with documentation. Her Instagram followers were commenting on posts from months ago, asking pointed questions about her yoga sessions and business trips. But the real masterpiece was what had happened to Kai. His business partners had received detailed financial reports showing discrepancies in several major deals. His investors had been sent photos of him in compromising positions. His country club had been anonymously informed about his substance abuse issues. Within 24 hours, both of their carefully constructed lives would be in ruins. And the best part was that it would all appear to be the natural consequence of their own actions catching up with them. My phone rang. Avon's number. "How does it feel to watch karma work in real time?" she asked, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "Pretty amazing, actually. You've outdone yourself." "We've outdone ourselves. This was a team effort, Keaton, and we're not done yet." "What do you mean?" "I mean that destroying them professionally and socially is just the beginning. Tomorrow we're going to destroy them personally. Are you ready for phase 3? I looked around my empty house, thought about Lara's parting words, remembered the way she'd tried to humiliate me in front of all her friends. Then I thought about all the nights I'd spent alone while she was with Kai, all the lies she'd told, all the ways she'd made me feel small and insignificant. "I'm ready," I said. "What do you need me to do?" "Meet me at the abandoned train yard on Riverside Drive tomorrow night at 8. And Keaton, bring Frank. Something tells me we're going to need backup for what comes next." After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and tried to process everything that had happened in the past 48 hours. 2 days ago, I'd been a victim, a man being cheated on and humiliated by his wife. Tonight, I was something else entirely. I was a man with a plan, a man with allies, a man who'd finally stopped taking whatever life threw at him and started throwing back, and tomorrow night, Lara and Kai were going to learn exactly what that meant. I spent the rest of the evening monitoring the social media fallout from Avon's digital warfare campaign. It was beautiful to watch, like dominoes falling in perfect sequence, each revelation triggering 3 more, each scandal building on the last. Lara's Instagram followers had dropped from 15,000 to 12,000 in just a few hours. The comments on her posts were brutal, with people she'd considered friends asking pointed questions about her marriage, her business trips, her sudden interest in yoga. Kai's situation was even worse. His business phone was apparently ringing non-stop with calls from angry investors and concerned clients. Brett had posted a carefully worded statement on the company website about conducting a thorough review of all recent transactions, which was corporate speak for, "We're throwing Kai under the bus to save ourselves." But the real satisfaction came from watching them try to control the narrative. Lara had posted a long, rambling statement about malicious rumors and jealous ex-husbands, but it only made her look more guilty. Kai had tried to go dark on social media entirely, but that just fueled more speculation. They were in full damage control mode, and they were failing spectacularly. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. Just the four of us. We can work this out." I recognized the writing style immediately. Brett, trying to play peacemaker. Probably at Kai's request, possibly with Lara's blessing. They wanted to negotiate, which meant they were scared. Good. They should be scared. I texted back, "Nothing to work out. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences." His response came immediately. "This doesn't have to get any worse. We can all walk away from this." I stared at the message for a long moment, thinking about all the ways they'd wronged me, all the lies they'd told, all the humiliation they'd put me through. Then I typed my final response. It's going to get much worse, and no one's walking away from anything. I turned off my phone and went to bed, sleeping better than I had in months. The abandoned train yard on Riverside Drive had been closed for 15 years, ever since the city had moved its freight operations to a more modern facility on the outskirts of town. Now it was nothing but rusted tracks, crumbling platforms, and the kind of atmosphere that made you think of old movies where bad things happened to people who'd made poor life choices. It was perfect for what we had planned. I arrived at 7:30, 30 minutes early, and found Frank already there. He was leaning against his pickup truck, smoking a cigarette and studying the terrain like he was planning a military operation. Which, in a way, he was. "Atmospheric place you picked," he said as I walked over. "Very final confrontation kind of vibe." "That's the idea. Any sign of them yet?" "Nope, but I've been thinking about what you told me, and I've got some concerns." I raised an eyebrows. "Such as?" "Such as the fact that you're playing a very dangerous game with some very desperate people. Kai's got money, connections, and a reputation to protect. Lara's got nothing left to lose. That makes them unpredictable. That's why you're here." Frank dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "I'm here because you're my friend, and you asked for help. But I need to know, how far are you willing to take this? Because once we cross certain lines, there's no going back." It was a fair question, and one I'd been asking myself all day. How far was I willing to go? What was I willing to do to people who'd betrayed me, humiliated me, tried to destroy my life? "I'm not looking to hurt anyone physically," I said finally, "but I want them to understand what they've done. I want them to face consequences for their actions, and I want them to know that I'm not the pushover they thought I was." Frank nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But if things go sideways, if they try anything stupid, I'm going to handle it my way. And my way tends to be pretty permanent." Before I could respond, headlights swept across the train yard. A black BMW pulled through the broken gate and parked about 50 feet away from us. Two figures got out, Kai and Brett. No sign of Lara or Avon yet. "Keaton!" Kai called out, his voice echoing off the empty buildings. "We need to talk." "So talk," I called back, making no move to approach them. Kai started walking toward us, Brett trailing behind him like a nervous shadow. As they got closer, I could see that Kai looked terrible. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept much lately. "This has gone far enough," he said when he reached us. "I don't know what kind of game you think you're playing, but it ends tonight." "Game?" I laughed. "You think this is a game?" You destroy my marriage, humiliate me in front of half the city, and you think I'm playing games? Your marriage was over long before I came along, Kai snapped. Lara was miserable with you. I just gave her what she needed. Frank stepped forward, and something in his posture made both Kai and Brett take an involuntary step backward. What she needed was a man who'd betray his own wife. What she needed was someone who'd lie to everyone he claimed to care about. This is between Keaton and me, Kai said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Actually, said a new voice from behind us, it's between all of us. I turned to see Avon walking out of the shadows, followed by Lara. Both women looked like they'd been through their own confrontation. Lara's makeup was smeared, and Avon's usually perfect hair was mussed. Avon, Kai said, and for the first time since I'd known him, he sounded genuinely afraid. What are you doing here? I'm here to watch my cheating ex-husband get what he deserves, she said calmly, and to make sure Keaton doesn't go easy on you. Lara stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. This is insane. All of this. We're adults. We should be able to handle our problems without these elaborate revenge schemes. You're right, I said. We should have been able to handle our problems like adults. You should have been able to tell me you were unhappy instead of sneaking around behind my back. You should have been able to end our marriage with dignity instead of trying to humiliate me at my own birthday dinner. I never meant for it to happen this way, Lara said, and for a moment, she almost sounded sincere. It just happened. Nothing just happens, Avon said coldly. You made choices, both of you. You chose to betray your spouses. You chose to lie to everyone around you, and you chose to try to make yourselves look like the victims when you got caught. Brett cleared his throat nervously. Look, maybe we can all take a step back here. Maybe we can find a way to resolve this that doesn't destroy everyone's lives. Destroy everyone's lives? Frank laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Buddy, these two destroyed their own lives the minute they decided to start screwing around. We're just making sure everyone knows about it. What do you want? Kai demanded, turning to me. Money? You want me to pay you off? Fine. Name your price. The offer hung in the air like a bad smell. Here was Kai Dornell, successful businessman, pillar of the community, trying to buy his way out of the consequences of his actions. It was exactly the kind of thing I'd expected from him. I don't want your money, I said. I want you to understand what you've done. I want you to face the consequences of your choices. And I want you to know that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're untouchable. What consequences? Lara asked. You've already ruined our reputations, cost us our jobs, destroyed our social lives. What more do you want? I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to remember what I'd ever seen in this woman. She was beautiful, certainly, and charming when she wanted to be. But underneath all that surface appeal was something cold and calculating, something that viewed other people as obstacles to be overcome or tools to be used. I want you to admit what you did, I said. I want you to take responsibility for your actions. I want you to stop trying to blame everyone else for the mess you created. Fine, Lara said, throwing her hands up in exasperation. Fine, I had an affair. I lied to you. I tried to humiliate you because I thought you were weak and pathetic and I wanted out of our marriage. Is that what you want to hear? It's a start, I said. Now, Kai, your turn. Kai looked around the train yard like he was searching for an escape route. When he realized there wasn't one, his shoulders sagged in defeat. I cheated on my wife with her sister, he said quietly. I embezzled money from my company to pay for hotels and gifts and trips. I lied to everyone, my business partners, my friends, my family, and when I got caught, I tried to blame everyone else instead of taking responsibility. The words hung in the night air like a confession at a tribunal. For the first time since this whole mess had started, both of them were being completely honest about what they'd done. There, Brett said quickly. They've admitted everything. Can we all agree to put this behind us now? Not quite, Avon said, pulling out her phone. Because I've been recording this entire conversation, and tomorrow morning this little confession is going to be shared with some very interested parties. Kai's face went white. You can't do that. That's blackmail. No, I said. That's justice. You wanted to play games with people's lives, to treat marriage vows like suggestions, to think you could lie and cheat and manipulate without consequences. Well, congratulations. You've just learned that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Lara lunged toward Avon, trying to grab her phone, but Frank stepped between them with the kind of casual efficiency that suggested he'd done this sort of thing before. I wouldn't, he said mildly, and something in his tone made Lara freeze in place. This isn't over, Kai said, his voice shaking with rage. You think you've won, but this isn't over. You're right, I said. It's not over. Tomorrow your confession goes to the district attorney's office, along with all the evidence of your embezzlement. It goes to your business partners, your investors, your clients. It goes to everyone who trusted you and everyone you lied to. And Lara, Avon added sweetly, your confession goes to your employer, your family, and every social media platform where you've been playing the victim. Let's see how your 15,000 followers react when they hear you admit to everything. Both of them stood there in the abandoned train yard, finally understanding the full scope of what they'd lost. Their marriages, their careers, their reputations, their futures, all of it gone because they'd thought they were smarter than everyone else. You've destroyed us, Lara whispered. No, I said. You destroyed yourselves. We just made sure everyone else found out about it. As we walked back to our cars, Frank clapped me on the shoulder. That was beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. You should have seen their faces when they realized they'd been outplayed. It's not over yet, I said. Tomorrow, we make sure the whole city knows exactly who they really are. And after that? I looked over at Avon, who was walking beside us with a satisfied smile on her face. After that, we figure out what comes next. But first, we had one more surprise for Kai and Lara. One final twist that would ensure they never forgot the price of betrayal. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The confession video had gone viral overnight, spreading through social media like wildfire. Avon had been strategic about the release, posting it simultaneously to multiple platforms with carefully crafted captions that provided just enough context to make the content devastating. By 8 a.m., local news stations were picking up the story. By 9, it was trending on 3 different social media platforms. By 10, both Kai and Lara had been forced to shut down their social media accounts entirely. I made coffee and settled in to watch the digital carnage unfold from the comfort of my kitchen table. My phone kept buzzing with messages from friends, co-workers, and people I hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if the video was real, if the confessions were authentic, if I was okay. The answer to all 3 questions was yes. Frank arrived around noon with sandwiches and updates from his network of contacts around the city. Kai's business partners filed for an emergency audit this morning, he reported, settling into the chair across from me. His investors are demanding their money back, and apparently, his country club has revoked his membership. What about Lara? Suspended from her job pending investigation. Her Instagram account is gone. Her LinkedIn profile has been deactivated. And Maya, her influencer friend, posted a very public statement distancing herself from the whole situation. I pulled up Maya's post on my laptop. It was a masterpiece of social media damage control, expressing shock and disappointment while carefully positioning herself as another victim of Lara's deception. Loyalty, I said dryly. It's a beautiful thing. My phone rang. Avon's number. Are you watching the news? She asked without preamble. Which channel? All of them. Channel 7 just ran a segment about social media confessions and their consequences. Channel 3 is doing a piece on workplace affairs and professional ethics. And Channel 12, she paused, and I could hear her smiling. Channel 12 is running an investigative report on embezzlement in local real estate firms. How do you feel about it? Honestly, I feel vindicated. For months, I thought I was going crazy, thought maybe I was imagining things or being paranoid. Now the whole city knows I was right. Any regrets? She was quiet for a moment. None. They made their choices, Keaton. We just made sure those choices had consequences. After we hung up, I spent the afternoon monitoring the continuing fallout. The confession video had been shared thousands of times, spawning countless comment threads and reaction videos. Local bloggers were writing think pieces about infidelity and social media justice. A relationship counselor had been interviewed on the morning show about the psychology of public confessions. Kai and Lara had become a cautionary tale, a modern morality play about the dangers of betrayal in the age of social media. Around 3 o'clock, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole to see Brett standing on my front porch, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "What do you want, Brett?" "I want this to stop," he said simply. "Kai's finished, his business is ruined, his reputation is destroyed, his marriage is over. Lara's in the same boat. You've won. Isn't that enough? Enough for what? Enough for revenge, enough for justice, enough for whatever you want to call this." I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but all I saw was exhaustion and genuine concern for his business partner. "You know what Kai did to me," I said. "You know what Lara did. You were there for some of it, helping them cover their tracks, making excuses for their behavior. Why should I show them mercy now? Because this isn't just about them anymore. Kai's got employees, people with families who depend on their jobs. His business partners are going to lose money. His clients are going to get hurt when deals fall through." It was a fair point, and one I'd been thinking about myself. Revenge was satisfying, but it rarely affected only the people who deserved it. "That's not my problem," I said finally. "Kai should have thought about his employees and his clients before he decided to embezzle from the company. He should have considered the consequences before he chose to destroy his marriage and mine." Brett nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. What if I could guarantee that he'd make restitution? What if he agreed to pay back everything he stole plus interest? With what money? His assets are probably going to be frozen as soon as the investigation starts. He's got offshore accounts, money he's been hiding from the IRS, from his business partners, from everyone. He'd be willing to bring it back, pay his debts, if you agreed to stop the media campaign. Now that was interesting. Kai had been even more dishonest than I'd realized, hiding money in offshore accounts while embezzling from his own company. The man was a walking criminal enterprise. How much money are we talking about? Enough to make everyone whole, enough to save the business and keep people employed. I considered the offer. It would be the responsible thing to do, the mature way to handle the situation. But maturity and responsibility were what had gotten me into this mess in the first place. For years, I'd been the reasonable one, the one who compromised, the one who took the high road. And where had it gotten me? Betrayed, humiliated, and nearly destroyed by people who'd viewed my decency as weakness. "No," I said. "The media campaign continues until I decide it's over. If Kai wants to make restitution, that's between him and the authorities, but he doesn't get to buy his way out of the consequences of his actions." Brett's shoulders sagged. "I was afraid you'd say that." "Why? Because you're going to lose money too? Because Kai's talking about doing something stupid, something that could hurt a lot of people, including you." A chill ran down my spine. "What kind of something?" "I don't know. He won't tell me, but he's desperate, and desperate people make desperate choices." After Brett left, I called Frank immediately. "We might have a problem," I said, and filled him in on the conversation. "You think he's serious about trying something?" I think he's a narcissist who's never faced real consequences for his actions, and now his whole world is falling apart. That makes him dangerous. Want me to keep an eye on him? Yeah. And Frank? If he tries anything at all, don't hesitate to stop him. Copy that. I spent the rest of the afternoon trying to focus on normal activities, cleaning the house, catching up on work emails, grocery shopping. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, that the confrontation at the train yard had been just the beginning. Around 6 o'clock, Avon called again. "We need to meet," she said, and something in her tone made my stomach clench. "There's been a development." "What kind of development?" "The kind we need to discuss in person. Can you come to my apartment?" 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Avon's couch while she paced back and forth across her living room like a caged animal. "Lara came to see me this afternoon," she said without preamble. She was different, desperate, scared. "What did she want?" "She wanted me to convince you to call off the media campaign. She said Kai was talking about hiring people to make the problem go away." "What kind of people?" "The kind who solve problems with violence instead of lawyers." "She said that specifically?" "She said Kai had connections, people who owed him favors, people who could make sure you stopped talking permanently." We stared at each other across the room, both of us understanding the implications. Kai wasn't just desperate, he was dangerous. And we'd pushed him to the point where he was willing to cross lines that couldn't be uncrossed. "What do we do?" Avon asked. I thought about it for a moment, considering our options. We could go to the police, but what would we tell them? That a man we'd publicly humiliated was making vague threats? We could back down, call off the campaign, try to negotiate some kind of peace treaty, or we could finish what we'd started. "We end this," I said finally. "Tomorrow night. One final confrontation, in front of witnesses, where everything comes out into the open. All the lies, all the threats, all the attempts to intimidate us into silence." "How?" I smiled, and for the first time since this whole mess had started, it felt genuinely predatory. "We're going to throw a party." The junction was packed on Friday night, which was exactly what I'd been counting on. Donna had agreed to let me use the back room for what I'd described as a community meeting, and word had spread through the local gossip network like wildfire. Everyone who was anyone in our small social circle was there, along with plenty of people who just wanted to witness whatever was about to happen. I'd sent personal invitations to Kai and Lara, along with Brett and a few other key players in their social circle. The message had been simple. Time to settle this once and for all. 8 p.m., the junction. Come alone or don't come at all. By 7:30, the back room was standing room only. Frank was positioned near the door, looking casual but alert. Avon sat at a table near the front, her laptop open and ready. Donna was behind the bar, serving drinks and pretending she wasn't hanging on every word. At exactly 8 o'clock, Kai and Lara walked in together, followed by Brett and Maya. They looked like people walking to their own execution, which wasn't far from the truth. I stood up as they entered, and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the crowded space. "I know this is unusual, but recent events have made it necessary to address some rumors and set the record straight about what's been happening in our community." Kai stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "This is harassment, Keaton. You can't keep doing this to us." "Doing what? Telling the truth? Sharing information that you yourselves confessed to on camera?" "That recording was made without our consent." "Actually," Avon interrupted, standing up with her laptop, "the recording was made in a public place, with all parties present and aware that they were being recorded, which makes it completely legal." She clicked a few keys, and the confession video began playing on the large screen TV mounted on the wall. The room watched in fascination as Kai and Lara admitted to their affair, their lies, and their attempts to blame everyone else for their actions. When it finished, the silence was deafening. Now, I continued, there have been some new developments since that recording was made. Developments that I think this community should be aware of. I nodded to Frank, who stepped forward with a folder full of documents. Yesterday, Kai Dornell attempted to bribe me to stop sharing information about his criminal activities. When that failed, he made threats against my safety through intermediaries. Gasps echoed through the room. Kai's face went white. That's not true, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? I opened the folder and pulled out a printed transcript. Because I have a recording of Brett Carver telling me that you were talking about hiring people to make the problem go away, and that you had connections who could make sure I stopped talking permanently. I looked directly at Brett, who was staring at the floor like he wanted to disappear through it. Brett, would you like to confirm or deny that conversation? Brett looked up, his face pale and sweaty. I was trying to help. Kai was talking crazy, making threats. I thought if I warned you. So, you confirm that Kai Dornell made threats against my life? The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Several people pulled out their phones to start recording. Maya was frantically typing on her phone, probably posting live updates to her social media accounts. This is insane, Lara said, stepping forward. Kai would never hurt anyone. You're twisting everything around to make us look worse than we already do. Am I? I pulled out another document. Because I also have evidence that Kai has been hiding money in offshore accounts while embezzling from his company. Money that should have gone to his employees, his partners, his clients. I handed the document to Donna, who read it with growing amazement. Holy hell, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. This says he's got over $2 million stashed away in the Cayman Islands. The room exploded in angry voices. Several people in the crowd were Kai's clients or business associates, and they were not happy to learn about his hidden assets. Where did you get that? Kai demanded, lunging toward me. Frank stepped between us, his hand resting casually on Kai's chest. I wouldn't, he said quietly, and something in his tone made Kai freeze. I got it from the same place I got everything else, I said calmly. From your own records, your own devices, your own careless digital footprints. You really should have been more careful about your cybersecurity, Kai. You hacked into my accounts? I didn't have to hack anything. You gave me access yourself, remember? When you were sleeping with my wife in my house, using my Wi-Fi network, syncing your devices to my backup system. You made it so easy that it was almost insulting. Avon stood up again, her laptop displaying a new screen full of financial records. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, I'd like to present a complete accounting of Kai Dornell's criminal activities over the past 18 months. Embezzlement, tax evasion, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit extortion. The crowd pressed closer to see the evidence, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. Kai looked around the room like a trapped animal, finally understanding that there was no way out, no clever argument or bribe or threat that could save him now. This is all fabricated, he said desperately. They're making this up to get revenge for the affair. Really? I said. Then you won't mind if we turn all this evidence over to the FBI tomorrow morning? The FBI? Brett stepped forward, his face pale. Keaton, you can't be serious. If the FBI gets involved, it won't just be Kai who goes down. The whole company will be investigated. Innocent people will lose their jobs. Then maybe Kai should have thought about that before he decided to become a criminal. I looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. This is what happens when people think they're above consequences, I said. When they think they can lie and cheat and steal and threaten their way out of any situation. When they think other people exist only to be used and discarded. Laura was crying now, her perfect makeup streaming down her face in black rivers. We're sorry, she said, her voice barely audible. We're both sorry. We never meant for it to go this far. You're not sorry for what you did, I replied. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. But you're not sorry for betraying your spouses, lying to your friends, or stealing from your business partners. I walked over to where she was standing and looked her directly in the eyes. You gave me divorce papers for my birthday because you thought I was weak, because you thought I'd just take whatever you dished out and ask for more. Well, congratulations, Lara. You were wrong. The room was completely silent now. Everyone watching this final confrontation between a cheating wife and the husband she'd underestimated. You wanted your freedom, I continued. You wanted to trade up to someone richer, more exciting, more dangerous. Well, you got exactly what you asked for. I hope it was worth it. I turned to address the room one final time. Tomorrow morning, all of this evidence goes to the appropriate authorities. The FBI, the IRS, the State Attorney General's office. Justice will be served, not by me, but by the system these two people thought they were smart enough to outsmart. I picked up my jacket and headed for the door, Frank falling into step beside me. And Kai? I called back over my shoulder. If you or anyone acting on your behalf comes anywhere near me or my friends, I'll make sure tonight's revelations look like a love letter compared to what comes next. As we walked out of the junction, I could hear the crowd behind us erupting in discussion, anger, and the kind of gossip that would spread through the entire city by morning. Avon caught up with us in the parking lot, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. That was incredible, she said, slightly out of breath. Did you see their faces? They finally understood that they'd lost everything. It's not over yet, Frank warned. Desperate people do desperate things. We need to stay alert for the next few days. No, I said, looking back at the junction, where people were still streaming out with their phones in their hands, already sharing the story with their own networks. It's over. They're finished, and they know it. All that's left now is for the authorities to clean up the mess. As we stood there in the parking lot, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not happiness exactly, and not satisfaction in the traditional sense, but peace. The knowledge that I'd fought back, that I'd refused to be a victim, that I'd held people accountable for their actions. Lara had given me divorce papers for my birthday, thinking she was giving me a cruel gift that would destroy my